It was 2019 and I had just landed an interview for a job as a data analyst. They wanted me to present some of the work that I had done in Power BI. The problem was, I'd never used Power BI before. When you get invited to an interview for a data analyst position, then you'll probably be asked to present some of your work to the interview panel. In this video, I'm going to show you what I showed to the interview panel, and crucially, what I said about what I was showing them. If you're new to this channel, hey, my name's Lee, and I help data practitioners break free of spreadsheets and advance their analytical careers. If that sounds like something that is helpful to you, then don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Okay, so what exactly did I present to the interview panel on that day? Before I get into that, let's wind the clock back 3 years prior to when I had that interview. So I was living back in the UK at that time, and I had some free time on my hands during the Christmas holiday, and I was sort of thinking, is there kind of like a data project that I could do? Because that's exactly what you do on your Christmas break, right? I was standing around thinking, well, what could I base this project on? And then suddenly an idea hit me. Now, being a history buff, I was an avid reader of History Today magazine, and I'd kept all of the copies of the magazine that had been delivered to me throughout that year. And as I was looking through the list of end-of-year book reviews for the best history books of the year, I noticed that virtually all of them were written by men. And then flicking back through the magazine, it looked like a lot of the articles had been written by men, and a lot of the articles that were about a named historical figure tended to be men. A lot of the book reviews seemed to be books written by men, and a lot of the book reviewers seemed to be men. There seemed to be a bit of a theme here, but I wondered, is that just the way that I'm perceiving this? So to find out, I looked back through all the previous editions of the magazine for that year, so this was 2016. And by gathering all of that data, I was trying to answer the following questions. So firstly, out of all the book reviews that featured in the magazine, how many were actually written by women? And the same for all of the articles in the magazine, how many of those are written by women? When an article focused on a named individual, how many of those individuals were women? And of all the books reviewed, how many of those books were written by women? Once I'd gathered all of that data, I built a dashboard in Tableau, which looked something like this. And as you can see from this dashboard, less than a third of the articles were written by women. When an article focused on a named individual, around 8 times out of 10, that individual was a man. And out of all of the books that were reviewed in the magazine throughout the year, only about a fifth of those books were written by women. And there was actually a few occasions, a few editions of the magazine where every single book that was reviewed was a book written by a man. I'm not going to dive into why I think this is a problem in this video. If you want to learn more about why this bothered me, then I did write a blog post about this, and there's a link to that post down in the description box below if you'd like to read a bit more. Anyway, I published this dashboard on Tableau Public. I wrote the blog post and then I tweeted about it. And then kind of a strange thing happened. I was accused of erasing women's contributions off the back of a piece that tried to highlight the lack of female representation in a history magazine. If you want more of the background to this saga, then I actually created a Storify. Storify doesn't actually exist anymore, but it was a way of compiling tweets and kind of chronicling like a Twitter thread, and I archived it, so you can still follow at least the initial stages of that Twitter discussion. Again, there's a link in the description box down below. But that accusation aside, the response was actually overwhelmingly positive. And actually 1 or 2 contributors to the magazine even posted their support, and the magazine editor actually wrote a response as well. We are indebted to Lee Durbin for his remarkable piece of data analysis, which has confirmed the gender imbalance among History Today contributors. This is an issue that everyone at History Today is well aware of, and has been the subject of many conversations and planning meetings. As a result, it is something that we have been consciously and proactively trying to fix. We hope the effects of this will soon become clear. It is certainly not something we are complacent about. To echo Mr. Durbin's closing thought, here's hoping for better in 2017. And there was one other thing that happened off the back of this as well. Dr. Fern Riddell, who is a prominent historian and has lots of Twitter followers, she tweeted encouragement for other female historians to pitch their articles to the magazine, and many of them did. I didn't actually track the magazine's progress through 2017, not because I had a problem with the magazine, I just couldn't afford to keep subscribing. But if anybody out there reads History Today magazine, then let me know. Has anything changed over the last 7+ years? Is there more of a gender balance in terms of the contributors and in terms of the books being reviewed? Let me know. Okay, so let's jump back to 3 years after this happened, when I was living in New Zealand and I was preparing for that interview. The hiring manager had asked me to demonstrate something that I'd built in Power BI, but I'd never used Power BI. So could I pass off this Tableau dashboard as a Power BI dashboard? Nah, that wouldn't be right. And as I was thinking about it, then it sort of hit me, this isn't really about the tool. Like, the point is not the tool. I realized that I could reframe the conversation to focus not on the tool that I couldn't really use at that point, but instead on the impact that I had when I created this Tableau dashboard and the choices that I had made along the way. When you're presenting data to an audience, which is precisely what I was doing in this situation, then they're more likely to remember what you have shown if you present it as a story. Stories are powerful. Stories are what makes us human. And presenting data without telling a story can sort of be a bit like singing a song that's out of tune. The lyrics are all right, but it doesn't really sound right. And it's the melody that matters. That isn't to say that you should always tell a story when you're presenting data, but more often than not, it really does help, particularly if you are presenting that story to an audience who might not entirely consist of specialists, who might not be as familiar with the content as they weren't in this case. And especially if you actually have a story to tell, if the data is telling a story, then tell that story. So here's what I did. I told the interview panel the same story that I had just told you today. I told them about the time that I stood around trying to think of some interesting data that I could visualize when I had a bit of extra time on my hands. I told them about History Today magazine and all the work that I had done looking through all of the past editions and noting down all of the data. I talked them through the dashboard so that I could demonstrate how it clearly showed what I had found during my research. That is, the underrepresentation of women in the magazine. And I told them about the impact that this piece had, both good and bad. Did it matter that I hadn't actually built it in Power BI? Not in the slightest. The interview panel loved the story that I told. They didn't really care that I hadn't used Power BI before, which I was very honest about. What mattered was that I could distill some important findings into a clear visual. And what really mattered was that I could tell the story behind that visual in a way that captivated the audience. It's not about the tool. It's about communicating insight and making a difference. You could be the most talented Power BI user in the world, but if you can't tell the story behind the data, then you're not having much of an impact. And it kind of renders the tool a bit useless. That's what I learned that day, and that's what landed me the job. The hiring manager later told me it wasn't even close. Okay, so if there's one thing that I want you to take away from this video, it's this. Don't get hung up on the tools and technologies. Find something that interests you, maybe even something that you're passionate about, and tell a story about it using data. And who knows, maybe one day you'll have an opportunity to share that story with a potential employer, and your enthusiasm will shine through. Mine did on the day, and it landed me the job, and it could land you the job too. Okay, until next time, thanks for watching, see you soon. Bye for now.